The small cafe was quiet in the late afternoon, the sun casting long shadows across the wooden tables. The waitress moved among them with practiced ease, her hands balancing plates and glasses, a polite smile on her face, always ready for the next order. She was young, with a gentle presence that made people feel at ease, but there was a part of her life she rarely shared. Hidden behind the counter in the corner was a piano, slightly worn from years of use, and it was there she found her true comfort. When no one was around, she would sit and let her fingers dance over the keys, filling the room with soft, beautiful melodies. It was her escape, her way to express emotions she couldn't put into words. That day, the cafe had only a few customers, and the atmosphere was calm. She had just finished cleaning a table when a new face entered. He was older, well-dressed, and carried himself with the confidence of someone used to attention. He ordered a simple drink but seemed more interested in the surroundings than in what he was drinking. The waitress, curious but careful, watched him as he moved toward the piano. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness because it wasn't common for anyone to show interest in the music she played. After a moment of hesitation, he asked if she could play something. Her heart skipped a beat. It was unusual for anyone outside the cafe staff to request her playing, and now someone with such a commanding presence was asking. She nodded, walking over to the piano. The keys felt familiar under her fingers, and as she began to play, a sense of calm washed over her. The melody was soft, tender, and full of emotion, and she didn't notice the attentive gaze following her every move. The customers stopped talking, listening to the music as it filled the small space. The man didn't speak much, just listened with a slight smile, his eyes never leaving her. When she finished, she felt a sudden wave of self-consciousness, aware of the silence that hung in the air. But instead of leaving, he applauded softly, and it felt different from the usual polite claps she received at the cafe. There was genuine admiration in his expression, a spark of interest that caught her off guard. He introduced himself briefly, his tone polite but firm, and asked if she would consider performing at a private event he was hosting. She blinked, taken aback. Performing for someone she barely knew, in front of people she had never met, seemed terrifying. She hesitated, unsure if she had the courage to step into that world. But there was something in his eyes, a mix of expectation and encouragement, that made her consider it. Over the next few days, she couldn't stop thinking about the invitation. The cafe felt smaller, her routine duller, as her mind wandered to the possibility of the performance. What would it be like to play in a grand hall filled with strangers? Would she be able to keep her composure, or would her hands shake as she faced their eyes? The questions came quickly, but beneath them, a quiet excitement began to grow. This was more than just an opportunity. It felt like a chance to step outside the safe boundaries of her everyday life and be seen for her talent. She practiced more than ever before, staying late after her shifts to sit at the piano and prepare for the event. Her fingers moved over the keys with determination, each note building her confidence bit by bit. She remembered all the hours she had spent alone, imagining moments like this, hoping someone might notice her ability. And now it seemed someone had. When the day of the event arrived, the cafe felt unusually empty. Her coworkers noticed her distracted demeanor, but she only smiled politely, keeping the secret of what was to come. She wore a simple outfit, something comfortable but neat, nothing extravagant, because she didn't want attention for herself, only for her music. Yet, as she left the cafe and stepped into the car that would take her to the event, her nerves fluttered like butterflies. The streets looked different that day, the sunlight sharper, the world larger, as if every detail was magnified by the anticipation. The mansion where the event was held was more magnificent than she had imagined. Large gates opened to a sweeping driveway, lined with trees and perfectly trimmed hedges. Cars and limousines were already arriving, and the sound of laughter and music drifted through the air. She felt a wave of intimidation, realizing how small and ordinary she seemed in comparison to the grandeur surrounding her. But she reminded herself of why she was there. For the music, for the chance to show a part of herself that rarely saw the light. Inside, the mansion was a whirlwind of activity. Staff moved quickly, arranging flowers, adjusting lights, and preparing for the guests. The air was filled with the scent of expensive perfumes and freshly cooked food. The waitress felt a shiver of apprehension as she was led through the grand hall, her eyes wide at the lavish decorations and the sparkling chandeliers hanging above. The piano she would play was set at the center, and it looked even larger and more intimidating than she had imagined. Her fingers itched to touch it, yet she hesitated, feeling the weight of everyone's expectations pressing down on her. The guests began to arrive, and with them came a mix of excitement and curiosity. Whispers circulated among the crowd about the waitress who would perform, and she could sense the mix of mockery and anticipation. Some seemed genuinely curious, while others seemed to be waiting for a mistake, eager to see her fail. The tension made her heart pound, but she tried to steady herself, focusing on the music she loved rather than the judgmental eyes. As the evening progressed, the millionaire approached her, giving a polite nod and a reassuring smile. His demeanor was calm, but there was an unmistakable intensity in his gaze, as if he was testing her, seeing if she had the courage to step into the spotlight. She nodded back, taking a deep breath, reminding herself that this was her moment, not theirs. The piano was hers, and the music belonged to her alone. She approached the keys, feeling the coolness of the ivory under her fingers. The room seemed to hold its breath as she began to play, the first notes trembling slightly, but gradually finding strength. The music flowed, soft at first, then rising with confidence and emotion. She could see the expressions of surprise and admiration on some of the guests' faces, and it fueled her courage. The whispers faded, replaced by attentive listening. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with the thrill of being heard. Minutes passed, though it felt like mere seconds. She was lost in the music, each note a piece of herself that she shared with the room. The grandeur of the mansion, the lavishness of the event, the expectations of the guests, all of it faded away. Only the melody mattered, and for the first time, she felt completely in control of her world. No longer a shy waitress, but a performer with a story to tell through the piano. As the last note lingered in the air, a quiet applause began, then grew louder, until the room was filled with genuine appreciation. Relief washed over her, and a shy smile appeared on her face. She had done it. She had faced the fear, ignored the judgment, and let her music speak. The millionaire's approving nod made her heart lift even more, as she realized she had not only survived the scrutiny but had transformed it into admiration. That night, as she left the mansion and returned to her small apartment, the city lights twinkled like stars around her. She thought about the journey she had taken in just a few hours, from nervous anticipation to confident performance. The world felt larger, more open, full of possibilities she had never dared to imagine. And though she would return to her cafe, to the ordinary life she had known, a part of her had changed forever. She had discovered a strength and courage that would remain with her, quietly guiding her through every challenge yet to come. The memory of that day, the sound of the applause, and the feeling of being truly seen would stay with her. A reminder that sometimes, taking a risk could lead to moments beyond dreams. The next morning, the cafe felt different. Even though everything looked the same wooden tables, the same worn chairs, the same smell of fresh coffee, the waitress could sense a subtle shift. She moved between the tables with her usual polite smile, but inside, her mind was racing with thoughts about the invitation she had received. The news of the upcoming performance had started to spread quietly, at least among those who had noticed her leave for the mansion the night before. Her co-workers gave her curious glances, whispering softly when they thought she wasn't looking. Some asked questions directly, but she just smiled and said she had something personal to attend to, avoiding details. The idea of performing for a high-profile audience was exciting, but it also brought a heavy weight of pressure. Her fingers itched to practice at the piano, and she had spent the night replaying the music in her mind. Every note she had played at the mansion felt alive in her memory, and she knew she had to perfect her performance. She stayed late at the cafe, after cleaning and closing, sitting at the small piano tucked into the corner. She pressed each key with care, letting the sound fill the empty room, and imagined herself back at the grand hall. This time, she wanted her performance to be flawless. She wanted the music to speak for her before anyone could judge her appearance, her background, or her nervousness. Over the next few days, the anticipation of the event began to affect her everyday life. Simple tasks felt heavier, and every glance from strangers seemed amplified. She imagined the whispers that might follow her into the mansion, the judgmental stares of people waiting for her to make a mistake. But alongside the fear, a quiet excitement grew. The thought of being seen, of finally sharing her music with a wider audience, was thrilling. She would often close her eyes and play entire melodies in her mind while serving customers, letting the music guide her fingers even when she couldn't reach the keys. Her coworkers noticed her distracted smile, but they didn't press her for answers, sensing that something important was on her mind. The night before the event, she could hardly sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined walking into the grand hall, seeing the sparkling chandeliers, hearing the murmur of the crowd, and feeling the weight of their attention. She imagined mistakes, wrong notes, trembling hands, the embarrassment of failing in front of strangers. But she also imagined the moments of triumph, the applause, and the satisfaction of playing with confidence. Her thoughts spun in endless circles, and though she felt exhausted, she knew she had to rise early the next morning to prepare. She packed her bag carefully, choosing simple but elegant clothing that allowed her to move comfortably, wanting to feel at ease while performing. The next day, the car ride to the mansion felt longer than before. Each street seemed to stretch endlessly, and her nerves tightened with every passing moment. She tried to breathe deeply, telling herself that she had prepared for this, that the music belonged to her, not to the audience. The mansion loomed ahead, and as the gates opened, a mixture of fear and anticipation washed over her. She could hear laughter and music drifting through the air, and she realized that the party had already begun. Guests were arriving in waves, and the energy of the crowd was palpable. She felt small and ordinary in comparison to the elegance and confidence surrounding her. But she reminded herself that her talent was what mattered most. Inside, the staff moved quickly, attending to details and preparing for the grand event. The piano at the center of the hall seemed larger than before, and its polished surface reflected the bright lights. She could feel the eyes of the staff and the arriving guests on her, and the tension in her chest grew. She walked toward the piano slowly, trying to ignore the growing murmurs of the crowd. She felt as though everyone was waiting for a mistake, but she reminded herself that her music was her voice, her way to express herself. It was her moment to shine. As the performance began, she started with slow, gentle notes, testing the space and feeling the response of the audience. She could hear the soft rustle of movement and the murmurs of people shifting in their seats. Some whispered to one another, their curiosity piqued, while others seemed to be waiting for a misstep. Despite the pressure, she focused on the keys, letting the music flow naturally. Her hands moved with confidence, each note carrying her emotions and her story. She felt the audience begin to notice, their eyes turning toward her as they realized her talent was real and compelling. The atmosphere began to change. Whispers of doubt turned into murmurs of admiration, and the tension that had surrounded her melted into a quiet respect. She could see the expressions of surprise on the faces of the guests, and it gave her the courage to play more boldly. Her music filled the room, rising and falling with emotion, capturing the attention of everyone present. Even those who had expected her to falter could not deny the beauty and skill in her performance. She played with passion and authenticity, feeling more alive than she had ever felt before. The millionaire watched from the edge of the room, his initial curiosity evolving into genuine appreciation. He had invited her with a hint of skepticism, wondering how she would handle the pressure. But as the music continued, he realized that she was more than capable. She had transformed the expectations of humiliation into a showcase of talent, and the energy of the room shifted in her favor. Applause erupted spontaneously at moments, and she felt a rush of satisfaction, knowing she had earned it. The initial fear melted into joy, and she smiled as she played, connecting with the audience in a way that transcended words. After the performance, The guests approached her with compliments and admiration, their earlier whispers now replaced with praise. Some asked how she had learned to play so beautifully, while others expressed amazement at her courage. The waitress felt a mix of relief and pride, realizing that she had not only faced the challenge but had exceeded expectations. The experience left her feeling empowered, a sense of self-assurance blossoming within her. The millionaire himself acknowledged her talent, complimenting her performance and expressing admiration for her dedication. In the following days, the impact of the event continued to unfold. She returned to her work at the cafe, but now there was a quiet confidence in her movements, a subtle grace in her interactions with customers. People noticed a change in her demeanor, sensing that something significant had happened. She reflected on the experience often, understanding that the performance had taught her about courage, self-expression, and the importance of embracing opportunities, no matter how intimidating they might seem. She also realized that the event had opened doors she had never imagined. Opportunities to perform in new settings, invitations to other gatherings, and even offers to teach piano began to emerge. Yet, she remained grounded, understanding that her journey was about more than recognition. It was about sharing her passion and staying true to herself. Each time she sat at the piano, whether in the cafe or elsewhere, she carried the memory of that night with her, letting it inspire her and guide her music. Through this experience, the waitress learned that talent alone was not enough. Courage, resilience, and authenticity were equally important. She discovered a new side of herself, one that could face challenges and thrive under pressure. The party, which had initially seemed intimidating and potentially humiliating, became a turning point in her life, a moment when she realized that the world could see her as she truly was. And with each note she played thereafter, she carried the confidence, pride, and joy of having embraced her moment and transformed it into a story of personal triumph. The morning of the party arrived with an unusual stillness. The city streets seemed quieter, as if they knew something important was about to happen. The waitress woke early, her mind buzzing with anticipation and nerves. She carefully dressed in simple yet elegant attire, not wanting anything flashy to distract from her music. Every detail mattered to her, the way her hair was arranged, the shoes she would wear, even the sheet music she carried in her bag. It wasn't just a performance. It felt like stepping into a completely different world, one she had only imagined in her quietest moments. On the way to the mansion, she felt the tension building inside her chest. She tried to focus on her breathing, counting slowly to 10 with each inhale and exhale, but the excitement and fear mingled in a way she had never experienced before. Her mind replayed every lesson, every practice session she had completed. She remembered the quiet afternoons at the cafe, the empty streets, and the piano that had become her closest companion. All those moments had led to this, and she knew she had to trust herself now. The mansion came into view even more grand than she remembered. Tall gates opened to a sweeping driveway lined with trees and perfectly trimmed hedges. Limousines and luxury cars were parked neatly along the sides, and guests arrived in small groups, dressed in elegant attire, chatting and laughing. The sound of music floated through the air from the main hall, blending with the soft hum of voices. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that the music was hers to share, and she stepped out of the car, her heart racing. Inside the mansion, the party was already in full swing. Guests moved from room to room, sampling hors d'oeuvres, sipping drinks, and admiring the extravagant decorations. The lights sparkled off the crystal chandeliers, casting patterns across the marble floors. She felt a moment of awe, then quickly reminded herself to stay grounded. She was there to perform, not to be dazzled by wealth or extravagance. Her focus remained on the piano waiting for her in the center of the grand hall. Staff guided her through the rooms, carefully avoiding the flow of the crowd, until she finally stood in front of the grand piano. Its polished surface gleamed under the lights, and she could see her reflection in its smooth black finish. The nerves in her stomach tightened as she touched the keys for the first time that evening. The hall was vast, and every sound seemed to echo, carrying her smallest mistake into the ears of dozens of people. But she reminded herself that she had practiced relentlessly and that her music had the power to capture the room. The first guests began to take notice, whispering about the young woman at the piano. Some seemed skeptical, expecting a mistake or awkwardness. Others looked genuinely curious, intrigued by the idea of a waitress stepping into such an elegant and intimidating setting. She could feel their eyes on her, a mix of expectation and doubt pressing down on her shoulders. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she focused on the familiar rhythm of the keys, letting the first notes flow naturally. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the music take over, and slowly the tension in her body eased. The sound of the piano filled the room, soft at first, delicate and careful. She watched as the initial whispers and judgmental glances transformed into attentive stares. The audience was listening, truly listening, and it gave her courage. Her hands moved with increasing confidence, the music growing in depth and emotion. She was no longer just a waitress playing in front of strangers. She was a performer, telling a story through her fingers and the notes that filled the air. Each chord resonated not only in the hall but within herself, affirming her talent and her right to stand there. As she continued, she noticed subtle shifts in the crowd. Guests who had entered with a hint of mockery now leaned forward, their expressions softening in surprise and admiration. Conversations died down, replaced by the sound of the piano carrying the emotions she poured into it. Even those who had come expecting entertainment at her expense seemed captivated by the skill and passion evident in every movement of her hands. The atmosphere changed gradually from one of expectation to one of respect, and she could feel the power of her music weaving through the room. The millionaire observed from the edge of the hall, initially curious, but now deeply impressed. He had invited her with a mixture of intrigue and skepticism, curious to see how she would handle the pressure. Watching her, he realized that she was far more capable than he had anticipated. Her performance wasn't just technical skill. It was an expression of courage, authenticity, and resilience. The way she commanded attention without demanding it, letting the music speak for her, was captivating. He felt a mixture of pride and humility, realizing that he had underestimated her determination and talent. The waitress, feeling the audience's attention and appreciation, allowed herself to play with greater freedom. Her nerves began to fade, replaced by a sense of exhilaration. She could see the subtle nods of approval, the smiles, and the genuine engagement from the guests. The music was no longer a performance to impress. It had become a conversation, a shared experience that connected her to the people in the room. Every note she played carried her story, her struggles, her quiet moments of practice, and her love for the piano. The crescendo of the piece reached its peak, and she felt a rush of emotion she had never experienced before. The audience was fully absorbed, hanging on every chord and every melody. She played not for recognition or applause, but because the music demanded it, because it was the purest expression of herself she could offer. Her eyes swept across the hall, taking in the faces of those who had doubted, who had whispered, and who now seemed genuinely moved. It was a powerful moment of transformation, both for herself and for the audience. When the final notes faded, a silence lingered for a brief moment before applause erupted, growing louder and louder. The hall was filled with genuine admiration, and she felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond words. Relief and joy washed over her, and a shy smile appeared on her face. She had faced the fear, embraced the moment, and transformed it into something beautiful. The applause was not just for her music but for the courage it had taken to stand there and share it. Guests began to approach, offering compliments and words of encouragement. Many expressed amazement at the skill and emotion she had conveyed, while others were curious about how she had learned to play so beautifully. The attention, once intimidating, now felt affirming and uplifting. Even those who had initially expected her to falter now seemed genuinely impressed. The waitress felt a quiet pride, understanding that she had proven something not only to the audience but to herself. The millionaire finally approached her, his expression reflecting genuine admiration. He complimented her performance and acknowledged the courage it had taken to perform in such a challenging environment. His approval, though initially intimidating, now felt like a validation of her dedication and talent. She realized that the event had been more than a performance. It had been a test of confidence, resilience, and authenticity, and she had passed it with grace. After the performance, she left the grand hall with a sense of fulfillment and quiet triumph. The experience had shown her that talent alone was not enough. Courage, perseverance, and self-belief were equally important. She had faced scrutiny and potential humiliation, but had turned it into a moment of genuine connection and admiration. The evening had transformed her perception of herself, giving her the confidence to pursue further opportunities and to embrace challenges that once seemed impossible. Returning home, the city lights twinkled around her as she reflected on the night. The applause, the admiration, and the realization of her own strength stayed with her, a reminder that moments of courage could change the course of a life. She understood that this was just the beginning, that her journey as a performer and as a person willing to embrace opportunities had only started. And as she sat quietly, replaying the music in her mind, she knew that her love for the piano and her newfound confidence would guide her through every challenge and every chance yet to come. The night had settled over the mansion, casting long shadows through the tall windows and reflecting off the polished floors. The music had begun, and the waitress felt the familiar tension and excitement as her fingers touched the keys of the grand piano. The room was full of guests, many of whom had gathered in the central hall to witness her performance. The air was thick with anticipation, a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and the quiet hope of discovering something extraordinary. She took a deep breath, feeling the cool surface of the piano beneath her hands, and let the music begin. The first notes were soft, tentative, as if testing the waters. She could feel every eye in the room, every whisper of movement, every shift in attention. Her nerves were present, but they no longer controlled her. She had practiced for this moment, and now it was time to let the music speak. The melody flowed gently at first, each note deliberate and precise, painting a picture of emotion and longing. Slowly, the room began to quiet, the chatter fading as guests focused on the unexpected talent before them. As she continued, her confidence grew. The music became more expressive, her fingers moving with fluidity and strength. The audience, initially waiting for a moment of embarrassment, began to lean in, their eyes widening in surprise and admiration. She noticed some guests exchanging looks, their earlier skepticism replaced by a newfound appreciation. The whispers of doubt transformed into murmurs of excitement, and the energy of the room shifted. Her performance was no longer just about playing notes. It was about commanding attention, telling a story through her music, and connecting with every listener present. She felt the music flowing through her, lifting her spirits and freeing her from the weight of fear. Each chord resonated with confidence. Each melody carried her passion and dedication. The audience responded, some subtly tapping their fingers to the rhythm, others nodding in approval, and a few even allowing themselves to be visibly moved. It was a moment of connection, a rare experience where the performer and the listeners shared something profound and unspoken. She realized that her fears of humiliation were unfounded. The room was captivated, not critical. The millionaire observed from the side, initially with a hint of curiosity, now with genuine admiration. He had arranged this performance partly to see how she would handle pressure, but it was clear that she had exceeded any expectations he might have had. Her courage, skill, and authenticity shone through, and he found himself impressed by her composure and the way she held the room with her music. He watched as she transformed the atmosphere from one of casual entertainment to one of genuine respect and attention. Midway through the piece, the waitress allowed herself to become fully immersed. Her hands moved faster, the music more dynamic, filled with emotion and energy. The room seemed to vibrate with the sound, the echoes of the grand piano reaching every corner. She felt a rush of exhilaration, a sense of liberation, knowing that she was expressing herself freely and honestly. The audience, caught in the wave of sound, could not help but be drawn into the story she was telling through her performance. The guests' reactions were varied but unanimous in their admiration. Some clapped softly between sections, showing their appreciation for particularly skillful passages. Others whispered to neighbors, marveling at the unexpected talent of a young woman who had seemed so ordinary just hours before. Even those who had arrived expecting to witness an awkward or amusing moment found themselves captivated, unable to turn away. It was a transformation, both for the performer and for those who had come to judge her. The music swelled to a climax, a series of chords that demanded attention and admiration. Her fingers danced across the keys, confident and precise, and she felt the thrill of being in control of the room. Every note was an assertion of her presence, a declaration that she belonged in that space, not as a novelty, but as a true artist. The tension that had gripped her earlier melted into pure joy, a connection with the music and the audience that transcended fear. In that moment, she felt completely alive, completely herself. As the final notes faded, a brief silence hung in the air before applause erupted. It was thunderous, heartfelt, and sustained, a testament to the impact of her performance. The guests rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, their expressions full of genuine admiration. She smiled, overwhelmed by the response, feeling a mix of relief and pride. She had faced the scrutiny and the fear, and in doing so, had turned a potentially humiliating situation into a triumph. People began to approach her, offering compliments, shaking her hand, and expressing their amazement at her talent. Many asked how she had learned to play so beautifully. Others praised the emotion and depth of her performance. She received the attention with humility and gratitude, acknowledging each compliment with a smile. It was a moment of recognition she had never experienced before, a validation of the countless hours of practice and dedication she had put into her music. The millionaire finally approached, his expression a mix of satisfaction and respect. He congratulated her, acknowledging her courage and skill, and admitted that he had been curious to see how she would handle the pressure. She listened, feeling a sense of accomplishment and pride that went beyond words. It was not just the applause or the recognition that mattered, but the realization that she had met the challenge with integrity and authenticity. The experience had been transformative, showing her the power of perseverance and self-belief. As the evening continued, she moved among the guests, speaking softly with those who wanted to learn more about her music. She noticed that the atmosphere had completely changed from the moment she arrived. What had once been an audience eager for entertainment or spectacle was now genuinely engaged, inspired, and respectful. The whispers of judgment had been replaced with admiration, and she felt a deep sense of satisfaction in knowing that her talent and courage had made this difference. After the party, as she walked through the quiet streets on her way home, she reflected on the night. The mansion, the guests, the music, and the applause all blended into a memory of triumph and self-discovery. She realized that this experience had not only showcased her talent, but had also taught her the importance of confidence, resilience, and the courage to embrace opportunities. Her love for the piano had always been personal, a refuge from the ordinary, but now it had become a bridge to the wider world, a way to share herself and connect with others. The days that followed brought new opportunities and recognition. Invitations to perform in other settings began to appear, and people who had witnessed her performance expressed interest in hearing her again. Yet she remained grounded, understanding that her journey was about more than accolades. It was about passion, dedication, and authenticity. Each note she played continued to reflect the growth and confidence she had gained, reminding her that fear could be transformed into courage, and challenges into triumphs. She returned to the cafe with a renewed sense of self. Her interactions with customers and co-workers carried a subtle confidence, a quiet pride in what she had accomplished. The piano in the corner of the cafe no longer felt like just an instrument. It was a symbol of her journey, her courage, and her ability to rise above fear. She continued to practice not out of obligation, but out of love for the music and the joy it brought her. And though she would always remember the grandeur of the mansion and the applause of the guests, she knew that the true reward was the discovery of her own strength and the realization that she could face any challenge with grace and determination. The performance at the mansion remained a defining moment in her life, a story she would carry with her forever. It was a reminder that opportunities, no matter how intimidating, could lead to growth, recognition, and fulfillment. She had taken a risk, faced judgment, and emerged stronger, proving to herself that talent combined with courage could create something truly remarkable. And with every new day and every new note she played, she carried the memory of that night, letting it inspire her and guide her through the many possibilities that lay ahead. The days after the grand party were different for the waitress. Returning to her usual life at the cafe, she found herself carrying a quiet confidence that had been absent before. The piano in the corner of the cafe, once a simple tool for her own enjoyment, now felt like a companion that had witnessed a remarkable change in her life. Customers noticed a subtle difference too. There was a calm strength in the way she moved through the room, a gentle assurance in her smile, and a warmth in her interactions. Some customers even commented on how radiant she seemed, though she only offered a modest smile, not wishing to boast about what had happened. The event had left a lasting impression on everyone who attended, and soon, word of her performance spread beyond the mansion. Friends and acquaintances of the guests mentioned her skill, and even people who had not been at the party expressed curiosity about her music. She received invitations to perform in other settings, from small private gatherings to more formal events. Each invitation was a testament to the impact of her performance and the courage it had taken to play in such an intimidating environment. Yet she remained grounded, understanding that the true reward was not fame or recognition, but the realization of her own abilities. In the quiet moments after her shifts at the cafe, she would sit at the piano, replaying the melodies she had performed and experimenting with new compositions. The music became a way to reflect on the experience, a reminder of the journey she had taken from nervous anticipation to confident performance. Her hands moved over the keys with ease and purpose, each note carrying the memory of the applause, the admiration, and the unexpected support she had received. She felt a deep connection to her own talent, recognizing that the courage to take a risk had opened doors she had never imagined. The millionaire occasionally reached out, inviting her to other events or asking for updates on her progress. He had initially seen her as a curiosity, someone to test under pressure, but his admiration for her talent and composure grew with each interaction. He praised her dedication and encouraged her to continue pursuing music, offering guidance and advice when appropriate. She accepted his support graciously, understanding that it was valuable, but she remained careful to maintain her own independence and focus on her personal growth. The experience had also changed the way she saw herself. She no longer doubted her abilities or feared judgment from others. The performance at the mansion had been a turning point, showing her that she could face challenges, overcome fear, and shine under pressure. This newfound confidence permeated every aspect of her life, influencing her work at the cafe, her interactions with friends, and her approach to opportunities that came her way. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. In the weeks that followed, she balanced her life between her work at the cafe and her growing involvement in music. She continued to practice diligently, exploring new pieces and refining her skills. Occasionally, she performed at small gatherings or private events, each time feeling more at ease and more connected to her audience. The music was no longer just a private refuge. It had become a bridge to the world, allowing her to share a part of herself that was deeply personal and profoundly expressive. She discovered that the joy of performing was not only in the applause but in the connection it created, the shared experience between performer and listener. The recognition she received was accompanied by opportunities for mentorship and collaboration. Other musicians and enthusiasts reached out, eager to learn from her experience and to work with her. She approached these opportunities with humility and enthusiasm, understanding that growth came from both teaching and learning. Each new interaction, each new challenge, reinforced the lessons she had learned at the mansion. The importance of preparation, the power of courage, and the value of authenticity. Despite the growing attention, she remained committed to her roots. The cafe continued to be her base, a familiar place where she could play freely and stay connected to her everyday life. She understood the importance of balance, of staying grounded while pursuing new opportunities. The piano in the cafe became a symbol not just of her talent, but of her journey, a reminder of the risks she had taken and the strength she had discovered within herself. Every note she played carried the story of her courage, her dedication, and her ability to embrace challenges. The millionaire's admiration and support were steady but unobtrusive. He respected her independence and encouraged her to follow her own path. His initial intentions, which had included a hint of testing her confidence, had transformed into genuine appreciation and mentorship. She recognized the value of having someone believe in her abilities while still allowing her to maintain control over her own decisions. This balance helped her navigate new opportunities with clarity and confidence, knowing that her choices were guided by her own vision and not by the expectations of others. As the months passed, her life became a blend of ordinary routines and extraordinary moments. The cafe remained a place of comfort and connection, while her performances brought her into new and exciting environments. Each experience reinforced the lessons she had learned: that talent was meaningful only when combined with courage, that fear could be transformed into strength, and that authenticity was the key to genuine connection. She grew not only as a musician but as a person, learning to trust herself and embrace the unknown with grace and resilience. The memory of that first performance at the mansion stayed with her, a constant source of inspiration. She often reflected on the journey from nervous anticipation to triumphant performance, understanding how much she had grown in such a short period. The applause, the admiration, and the validation she received were powerful, but what mattered most was the discovery of her own courage and the realization that she could rise to any challenge. This insight shaped her approach to life, music, and the relationships she formed along the way. Over time, she began to share her story more openly, not for recognition, but to inspire others. She spoke about the importance of pursuing passions, embracing fear, and remaining true to oneself. Her experiences resonated with many, and she became a quiet source of encouragement for those facing their own challenges. She emphasized that success was not measured solely by accolades or attention, but by the growth, courage, and authenticity that came from taking risks and following one's passion. Looking back, she realized that the opportunity to perform at the mansion had been a turning point not just in her musical journey, but in her personal development. It had shown her that she was capable of far more than she had imagined, and that courage and authenticity could open doors to new experiences and connections. She understood that life would continue to present challenges, but she now had the confidence and resilience to face them with determination and grace. The piano remained central to her life, a source of expression, reflection, and connection. Each performance, whether in a grand hall or a quiet cafe, was a reminder of the journey she had undertaken and the growth she had achieved. She approached each note with intention, knowing that her music had the power to touch hearts, inspire courage, and create meaningful connections. The experience had transformed not just her public performances, but her understanding of herself, her abilities, and the possibilities that life held. In the end, the story of the waitress who played the piano at the mansion was more than a tale of talent and performance. It was a story of courage, growth, and the discovery of inner strength. She had faced fear, embraced opportunity, and emerged transformed. The applause, admiration, and recognition were meaningful, but the true triumph lay in her realization that she could trust herself, pursue her passions, and create beauty in the world through her music. And with each new day, each new note, she carried that lesson forward, confident, grounded, and ready for whatever life would bring next.